Well, thank you very much, Charlie, for that overly generous introduction. I didn't realize when I joined Ian's family, I was actually joining a bigger family, and that family is right here. And every time I come back to San Francisco, I feel like it can't be better than last year. The feeling can't be warmer, and yet every time it is. And it feels like this circle of conservationists that we are, that you are, it's just getting bigger, and the links are getting stronger. So thank you all for coming here. I wanted to start by conveying Ian's sadness at not being here today. He was, we had it all perfectly worked out. There's a big illegal wildlife trade conference in London the last couple of days, and there was a critical day's gap that would allow him to fly from London to here and be here today. Unfortunately, the organizers shifted the dates by a day.
Hello, everyone at WCN.
And here's his video introduction.
In Nairobi. I'm on my way to a huge international wildlife trafficking conference in London, and I'll be with you on Sunday. Unfortunately, I'm not here when you're watching this, but Frank and David Dabalan will be with you, and they will give you all the fresh news having come fresh from the field. In the meantime, I have to tell you, although we have good news from parts of Africa, 10 out of 22 countries that the Elephant Crisis Fund supports are doing better for elephants. So, is there still an ivory crisis? Well, unfortunately there is. It's really desperate in the center of Africa, in the Congo, in the equatorial forests, in Mozambique, in so many places where our projects are at work. I'm really, really sorry not to be with you, but I know you're going to have a great time, and I'll be with whoever's there on Sunday. I'll be fresh from the conference in London, and I'll tell you all about it.
So I don't know, maybe some of you have read something about what's been happening at the conference, and it was a big conference to try and draw together all the players in the field of anti-trafficking and catalyze more collaborative action, get more governments together, and get them to realize the full magnitude of the trade and its impact on wildlife around the world. The illegal wildlife trade is worth somewhere between $9 and $25 billion a year, fourth only to drugs, human trafficking, and arms trades. So it was critical that we were there, and Ian was there with a team of 4 from the Elephant Crisis Fund. And I think the big mission that we faced was trying to reach the top of these criminal syndicates that are profiting most off the trade in illegal wildlife. And this is, it's been the biggest challenge to create collaborative action in this realm of anti-trafficking, and I'm really proud with what the team has managed to do in that realm. And I think we're going to see some big arrests later this year that's going to prove that right. So watch this space. The reason these guys are so hard to reach is because the kingpins at the head of this trade, the guys who are sitting at the top of these networks, are highly experienced crime bosses. They're not just people that are dabbling in the ivory trade. These are people that have trained in these other trades of drugs and arms and slavery and all the bad things in the world, and they run well-oiled machines. To catch them is tough. And luckily, collaborative action is coming to the rescue. And one of the things that's going to come out of this conference, before I move on to what I really want to talk to you about today, one of the things that's going to come out of it is there's 20 very big global financial institutions that have come together, and they are targeting the Achilles heel of these trafficking networks. And the Achilles heel is the very same thing that these trafficking networks are trying to get out of the trade, and that's money. And money these days leaves a trace, it leaves tracks. And by following those tracks, we can bring these guys down. These financial tools are being used successfully in the fight against drugs, tax evasion, corruption. All of these areas have benefited from these tools. So far, wildlife has not been able to get its act together to put this action into place. Well, now, thanks to the Elephant Crisis Fund and to other partners who are involved in these financial task force, we're putting together that interface to allow these financial analysis tools to be used to bring down the kingpins that are getting rich off the back of the dead elephants. The crisis, as Ian mentioned, is in full swing. We have got a terrible situation in the forests of Central Africa. Half of Central Africa's of their elephants have disappeared. 90% in the last 10 years in some situations. Gabon is currently the current epicenter. They're the ones that have lost half in the last 10 years. It's a terrible situation. The Gabonese president is probably the most engaged, among the most engaged of African presidents on this subject, but his country is being preyed on by rebel militias who are flooding across the border from Cameroon. But it's not all bad news, because as Ian said, in 10 of the 22 countries where the Elephant Crisis Fund has projects, those partners are making the situation better for elephants. What I really want to talk to you about today is not the ivory trade. I want to talk to you about the future beyond the ivory trade. I want to talk to you about what elephants are teaching us about how to protect them for the long term in Africa. Part of this story is Ian's devotion to tracking elephants. Ian was the first person to put a tracking collar onto an elephant back in 1965, and Save the Elephants has remained at the very forefront of this field ever since. And there's a simple reason why we have to track elephants with technology like this, and it's because they live such huge lives. You can't follow an elephant on foot. We've tried, it doesn't work. We just can't keep up. And it turns out that all-terrain, when it comes to vehicles, is marketing. They can't do it. We can't follow an elephant in a vehicle. And you can't even follow an elephant in a plane, because eventually night falls and the tanks run dry, and you can't follow them. This technology allows us to follow them day, night, across borders. For 3 years, these collars will last, giving us hourly reports on their positions. So we've been studying elephants for 20 years in Samburu. We know the 1,000 or so elephants that live in that ecosystem intimately. We know them each as individuals, and no one better than David Dabalan here, who's our head of field operations, who can recognize hundreds of them by sight alone, probably more easily than he can recognize human faces, or so he's told me. It turns out that elephants are highly individual. It's amazing. They're all sorts of different characters. Some are willful and moody, and others are wise and magnanimous. There's this fabulous variation in elephant characters. And it turns out that this variety of character extends all the way through to their movements. You can't predict, when you choose an elephant to follow with a collar, you can't predict whether that elephant is going to stay in a small, tight space and not really move around very much, or is she going to roam over huge, vast distances and teach you things about connectivity that you never knew before. You just can't tell. I find this variety of character absolutely electrifying. My previous obsession, my previous life was an obsession with the ocean. I was totally gripped by that strangeness of that ever-shifting alien world that is the ocean. And I found that I could the enormity of it, the tracklessness, the wildness, the sheer wildness of the ocean gripped me and consumed me. And I think I was still consumed by that world when I was immersed in it, if you like, when I first flew over the North Kenya landscape with Ian, tracking elephants in his plane. This vast terrestrial sea that expands, and for hundreds of miles north and east and thousands of miles to the west, you have this unfenced, enormous wilderness. And underneath the plane, matriarchs, these wise, highly intelligent, sentient individuals leading their families across this world. What drives them? What steers them in their voyages across this world? I was completely hooked. And that was the start of my journey with Ian and Save the Elephants. Unfortunately, this vast landscape is changing. And we've heard from other of our conservation partners who work up in northern Kenya who are talking a little bit about all the changes that we're seeing up in Samburu. And they're frightening. This landscape is being carved up. Africa's population is about 1.3 billion people today. It's going to reach 4 billion people by 2100. And it's developing fast. It's not just about population, it's about, wealth and development. There's connectivity, there's huge road networks, rail networks, oil pipelines, agriculture developments, dams. All of this is crowding into this landscape and changing it. If we want to stop this fragmentation, we can't lie in front of those bulldozers. Africa needs to develop. We need Kenya to be a modern country. But can we do it while keeping wildlife intact? What's at stake is the ability of the creatures that live in this landscape to migrate and disperse as they always have, and not get squeezed into ever smaller corners that leave them defenseless against the coming threats of climate change and other future impacts. So how do we do that? Well, this is a satellite view of northern Kenya, and right in the middle of it, there's our little research camp there. And this is how a human satellite sees the landscape. Now, this is how elephants use that landscape. This is a representation of all the elephant tracks that we've gathered over that landscape for the last 20 years. About 144 elephants have gone into that, and you can see the sort of arterial connections spreading out across the landscape. Well, here's the new tarmacked road that stretches up to the Ethiopian border. And with roads come development. You get ribbon development spreading up across alongside of these roads. And everywhere that you get this ribbon development, it's forming a barrier to not just elephant movements, but wildlife movements in general. Here's another swipe of the sword across the landscape. This is the planned Lamu, South Sudan, Ethiopia transport corridor. Road, rail, oil. What can we do? Here's a glimpse into the future. This is Tsavo National Park. There was no functional rail connection to the coast of Kenya from Nairobi. The government had to do something. They built a high-speed rail network. They did it with no warning, and we didn't get any chance. They did to influence it, but they did put these wildlife crossings in. You can see one here. Once they put the road in, they asked Save the Elephants to come and monitor how elephants were reacting to this change, because this slices through the biggest elephant population in Kenya. So we deployed 10 collars, and we started looking at how elephants were using it, and we said, actually, they are using these underpasses. And actually, the underpasses they put in were pretty good. There was an unplanned problem, however, which is that as soon as you give up that land for the railway, they left the underpasses, but it was a no man's land. It was officially owned by the railroad, but there was nothing in the railroad. That vacuum was immediately filled with people. So we now have got these wildlife underpasses that are clogged with people, and we're working hard to try and change that. But what was interesting is that there's now a new 6-lane highway plan for this. It's going to replace the single-lane road in each direction, and we're going to get 3 lanes in each direction. It's going to serve the road traffic going down to the coast. That tracking data that we deployed in order to monitor how the elephants were using the underpass on the railroad has been critical to informing the planning process over this road that's being built by an American contractor called Bechtel. And you groan, but this development is coming. It's happening. We have to work with these people. We can't work in opposition to them. We have to work with them. And to Bechtel's credit, they've been very consultative, and we've had good meetings with them. And you know what? They love Save the Elephants because we've got data to show what the elephants are doing. And this is the solution I want to talk to you about today, is that this technology is giving elephants a voice. And through that voice, wildlife is getting a voice. The other voice that elephants have is David Dabalan. David Dabalan has been leading community meetings in the north of Kenya using maps like this. He will take a map like this, which is a close-up version of what what I showed before. The red spaghetti is elephant tracks. The yellow is that road that we just saw. And just to the north of this is Archer's Post, the biggest town in our immediate area. David goes and shows these maps at community meetings. And it turns out people listen to this voice of elephants. They love the data that elephants giving. These maps, national government officials, senior government officials, they respond to these maps. Urban planners, country planners, landscape planners, they love these maps because finally it's not just people talking, it's actual evidence. Local government officials like them, and then the nomadic elders that David takes them to, they look at these maps and they go, oh yeah, the elephants do use that part there, but look at that. I didn't know elephants went there, and they get consumed by the fascination of these maps. So David has led a process, and if we have time, I'd love to tell him, have him tell you a little bit about that. But he's led a process of taking these maps to the community, sitting down with them and saying, look, here's what the elephants need. To the left of here is Samburu and Buffalo Springs National Reserves. To the right is Shaba National Reserve. Elephants use these areas, and you can see here these 2 areas of main passage. David has taken these maps and got those communities to say, yeah, okay, fine. Let's set this land aside. Let's set aside a corridor to allow elephants and other wildlife and our livestock to pass through this forevermore. Let's do that. Let's set that aside. And we've now got 4 of these corridors stretching across this road. So the tarmac road and the ribbon development along either side of it could no longer be a threat. We're not quite there yet because we still have the obstacle of what happens when the county or the local leadership changes. We need to now enshrine these corridors in law. And now we're working with national government to take this. But this kind of ground-up, consultative process of corridor creation has to be the future. Because a national-led process without the ground-up support is going to be doomed to failure. You'll get poaching in the corridor. You'll get people sabotaging the process, building in the corridor, and you'll get just what we saw in Savo, which is, hey, the government's put a corridor in here, there's no one here, let's just build. And so it's critical that we do that. Now, how do we further secure the future while we're engaging with the national government planners? Well, our secret weapon is these ladies. These are the Mama Tembos. Okay, and we took a leaf out of Shivani's book. Shivani launched the Mama Simbas, hugely powerful community project for lions that did more than what they set out to do. They ended up being massive ambassadors for lion kind. Well, these ladies, it turns out, are massive ambassadors for elephant kind. Their job on the face of it is to patrol these corridors. And every day they go out and they walk the corridors and they just check, okay, what's walked through here? They know how to identify all the prints. They see what's there, they record it, but they're also looking for any kind of settlement. And if they see settlement, they report it, and we can do something about it with the boards, with the community boards that help set them up. But their secondary role is just as important, because these ladies are now our biggest ambassadors for elephants and connectivity and this future battle that we're going to fight over space in Africa. I'd like you to meet another Mama Tembo. This is Timurid, who's a fantastic individual. She's a matriarch from the Empires family. And the Timurid Empire was a Central Asian empire in the 14th century. She is a fantastic elephant. She's one of those elephants we didn't know what she was going to be like when we first collared her. She moves from Meru National Park all the way to the other side of Mount Kenya, all the way up through into the semi-arid deserts of the high north, all the way back down past the Matthews Range and up into the highlands of Laikipia. She's an incredible mover. One of the elephants that we're always watching on our systems, transfixed. What's she going to do next? Well, this is one of the things that's so fascinating that Timurid does. This is that journey up into the highlands of Kenya. So what we've got here, our research camp is kind of over here, and this is, you can kind of see on the coloring of the map, this is a very arid area up here. When it gets really dry, Timurid moves to the highlands. And this is the Rift Valley escarpment here. And there's a slight lessening of the gradient. The slope gets a little bit easier here. This track is not just Timurid's track. There's a whole cohort of different elephants from different families that make the same movement. Not all of them, because elephants are individuals. Some don't move up here. But the ones that do always use this track. You fly this, there's nothing to stop them moving here or here, but they always choose to move here. And you know what they do? They come down. When they're moving west, they go that way. When they go moving east, they go this way. Why? Isn't that amazing? I mean, it's fascinating. So the challenge we face is that, here is a town called Oldonyero. And Oldonyero, I'm not sure why it's growing so fast, but it's growing very fast. And the human footprint here, which is the yellow that you can see here that we map, is rapidly expanding. And her favorite route through here is closed up, functionally closed up. And David has recently been leading community meetings to try and secure corridors in the same way that we have around Archer's Post, and to find a way to get movement through that. And David, if we get a chance later, I'd love you to explain a little bit about what those meetings were like. But they were pretty sticky at first, because this is outside of our normal area of operations. It's quite far away from us. And we had a secret weapon in those meetings, because not only did we have those maps that we could show them, but we also had people like Benjamin. Now, Benjamin is one of our elephant scholars. We have this elephant scholarship program, and we put about 120 kids through this highly, it's a very engaged scholarship program. It's not just to give them the money to go to school. In the holidays, they come and do booster programs with us, and we engage them in our work. Benjamin's an orphaned kid. He grew up in a little mud hut in Oldonyero. He graduated about 4 years ago in a first degree in geospatial engineering. He is now on our team defining how elephants used in the landscape, analyzing it and fighting for their space to thrive and survive in a modern Africa. He comes from Oldonyero. He showed up to the meeting. He's like, I'm here. There were 10 other kids from that town. They're like, actually, you're right. Elephants do something for us. What's more, they're having problems with conflict in Oldonyero, because as humans encroach on that corridor that Timurid and others like her have always used, they bang into houses, they bang into farms, they bang into a water tower, and they're like, "Ooh, I think I'll have a snack, or I'll have a drink," and they cause problems with the community. And we're still building the science around this, but what we're seeing from other areas is when you put corridors in, conflict dramatically decreases. You don't have elephants breaking fences or opportunistically picking up cabbages or swiping a field of tomatoes when they've got safe passage through. Because when these girls go, they just go. They don't want to be sticking around. And we've seen that with when fences appear in their path. They go mad trying to get through that fence. They're not rudderless. They want to go where they go. We just don't know why. Is it safety? Society? Sustenance? Sex? We know it's going to be one of those things probably, but what exactly is driving them? this is all very exciting because I think that the tracking data is giving elephants a voice, and we're getting more and more tracking data. Through the Elephant Crisis Fund, we've been funding the deployment of collars to get the other benefits from collaring. Originally, these collars were a research tool, but we soon realized that knowing where elephants are in this risky landscape can transform our opportunities to protect them. So what we do is this, broadly we call it intelligence-led patrolling. And by monitoring where elephants go, you can get ahead of the poachers by getting patrols when they move into risky areas. So you can defend a greater area of land with less people. There are longer-term benefits from funding these collars. There are 350 elephants. The data from these elephants are running through our systems right now. This is a screenshot of our system yesterday. This data is useful beyond anti-poaching efforts. This data is defining how elephants use these different landscapes and can be used to give elephants a voice in all these different places. So elephants have always been known as architects of the landscape. They can smell water. They can sense where water is. They dig wells that they drink from and then leave open for other animals. They clear bush, making it much more easy for a wider variety of animals to live there. And they spread seeds. They eat plants, provide a perfect preparation for that seed in their stomach before depositing that seed perfectly prepared for germination in a lovely little pile of fertilizer. These seeds travel huge distances because of elephants. It's the same in the forest. They're even more important to the functioning and regeneration of the forest, which, as you know, are one of the lungs of our planet. Without elephants, the forests change. Elephants create the pathways that many other mammals use to travel along. They also spread those seeds. Incredibly, the muddy footprints that elephants leave in the ground create a little puddle. And there's about 61 different species that live in the puddles of elephant footprints. Some of them are endemic. They only live in elephant footprints. What I think is exciting is I think that we're entering a new era now where elephants can be architects of the landscape in a new way. They can be helping us define the landscape with the tracking devices that we're able to put on them. They can define the landscape and do some computer-aided design for this new age architecture of the landscape. And I think it's exciting. And I think that it's one of these reasons that we've heard today so many causes for despair. There's such huge problems facing us all. I think elephants' new ability to carry these tracking devices and define landscapes in this new way and help plan for the future is a way to is a reason for hope, because technology is not standing still. We're not fighting these challenges from a static place. We're moving forward. The other thing that gives hope is all of us. I've felt the most incredible energy here today in this conference, and I think that what's becoming really clear to me through the work that all the partners of WCN do on the ground in Africa, and the collaboration that we've all got, the collaboration that we have with the Wildlife Conservation Network, and the collaboration we have with all of you. The network is not about just the conservationists in the field. The network is you. And the network is expanding. And we have the collaborative network that we've put together through the Elephant Crisis Fund is receiving incredible support from new areas that are expanding the network in still greater ways. We've got Tiffany and company here who've stepped in an incredible, new, unexpected way and allowing us to do ever more on the ground in Africa. And this kind of work is being funded, the administration of that work, the core administration that allows us to do the Elephant Crisis Fund for free. This is being done as a result of other networks like Ivory Ella, who are also here, and they fund our back office administration along with the Mary Boardman Foundation is also here. This network is increasing, and I think that's what I'd like to leave you all with today, is the fact that it's not. I think, Charlie, next year, there should be green tags saying conservationist on everyone's tags. Because you're all conservationists. Conservationists, our friend of elephants, Gao, I don't know if you're here, but Gao said something yesterday that really resonated with me. Conservation is not a job. It's a mindset. It's something that we all need to be doing. We have to repurpose the enormous talents. I look out at this room today, I see so many different talents. People who have skills in an enormous diversity of modern, I see engineers, I see financiers and accountants, all of you, designers, everyone has something to give. It's not just the people who have the honor of doing this stuff in Africa with these animals. Everyone can do something. And I hope that some of the stories you've heard today have moved you and make you want to get involved. And there's lots of different ways of getting involved. And I can't remember if it was this year or last year, but Chris Tompkins said it so beautifully when she stood on this stage, when she said, just one thing. This is a long journey. It's a huge challenge. We can only do it step by step. And every step we take is a step closer. So if you just take the attitude that every day, just do one thing. That's all it is, just one thing. And I urge you all to do one thing today, whatever it is, for wildlife. Thank you very much. Now, we're a little over time, but I just want to drag David onto stage just quickly to say hello. David, I know you. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm thrilled to be back again after several years to join again the big family of WCN. I'm so happy to be back here and share our stories. I am sure there's no time, but I'll make some time. Frank has given us the wider picture of how these elephants are actually struggling to go through ecosystem in a rapid world where there's so much development that we need, but obviously that conflicts with our conservation effort. I just want to give two little stories in our bigger, in the day-to-day meetings and meeting with this community and meeting with government officials, local officials. Recently, thanks to Shivani that had Mama Simbas, we had all the Mama Tembos now. We went in all the things that we've been doing, we took these mamas to a small spot. It's called Camel Derby, and I don't know how many of you have had this Camel Derby. And this was just to actually make this movement of Mama Tembos, or this lady who are protecting these corridors, into a much higher level where it's being recognized local-wise and even national-wise. So we went to this event. These mamas are from different communities. And one of the reasons why we picked them is because Samburu National Reserve and Buffalo Springs and Shaba, they all belong to different, they're national reserve. But people who live around these national reserves, they come, from different community backgrounds. And sometimes these communities, they have their own conflict. Anyway, they're Turkana, Samburu, Somalis, and many. The list goes on. We went into that little spot up in Maralal, and these ladies, they've never been in front of a camera, and they were interviewed on a camera. The following day, they all appeared in newspapers. And, that to me really was bringing the corridor awareness and these mamas to empower them into a different level. So when they saw themselves in a TV, which they've never seen themselves anywhere, and having their pictures all over in the newspaper, they really took it so deep into themselves and say, you know what, we will even do much better than it is just now. So that was something that really moved these ladies. And actually, from then, they have just gone up. And despite their differences of tribe and where they come from, they work so closely together now. And I can't tell you how proud they are in their little world doing what they're doing in the smallest area that they're doing. Another thing that I just want to say is we went into Old Nyuro where these elephants are going. This area, these elephants, whether they're bulls or females, they come from the lowlands going up on the mountains. But all along the way, there are few villages, and thanks to community conservancies, boards that we work very closely with them. These villages are just, not really nothing permanent. And we talked to them, we convinced them, and they, it's basically because the Samburu community, all of them, they know that this is an elephant track. If you're there and you get hurt, don't blame anyone. So when we convinced the meeting, they were very happy, actually, that we pointed out. And they kind of just moved a little bit. One of the biggest challenges that we have there is that as soon as you come to an area and talk about the land, it's such a sensitive issue. And people very quickly associate that as a land grab. They're like, why are these people talking about land? So we have to be very careful as we talk about this land issue, because it is all, very political, very sensitive, so we have to be very careful. Old Nyuro, just to rush into where, I want to talk about Old Nyuro, we went into a meeting. This is a new area that we've not worked before. We were talking, we gathered all the 3 board members, and this is where Peter comes from. And as they all sat down, it was all about talking again the same old story, which is the corridors and its land. And, everyone, there was so much quietness in this area, and people just not open to us. And we didn't know what, to make about this. But we started showing the maps and said, we are not interested in moving anyone out of his village. All we're trying to say is that there is like a defined elephant path or defined wildlife path. And we started talking about all the scholarships. We started talking about the job opportunities, and things isn't slowly by slowly. We are so far away from saying that, we've won this, but we are definitely on the right track. We need your support, and elephants without this, without going through this ecosystem, going through all these ecosystems from Mount Kenya all the way to the lowlands, I don't think we would like to see elephants in the small, zoos that we have here. So this is why we think this project of actually connectivity between one safe place to another is going to be the future, and it's very important. So we all, have to join hands and really make this possible. Thank you very much.